Hey there. I'm still pulling up the books and stuff. Hey, Misty. See, it's easy for me to do a roll call with my audience here. Um, I know you see the QR code. This is the same QR code that goes to Hill Pirate. So this will be from here on out forever after a Hill Pirate Studio production and will still be G2 Brief, separate and apart from Hill Pirate Studios, the channel. So we just doing that. Hey, Linda, who's a good girl? Hazel, you better be being a good girl. So I was asking before, would y'all like to do 1054 and all that? Um, or carry on with the Tanakh? I will ouch. That's a whole lot of tail to be beaten by. All right. So I'm going to she get all excited. Um so I guess what I'm gonna do is I'll go ahead and do Proverbs and see where we're at. Um and then redo 1054 if we have time, if that is acceptable. All righty. We have some good folks in here. Good start to the day. So this is chapter 2 of Proverbs. Um, we're just going to do it not by the date. I've fallen off of that too greatly, too bigly, if you will. Oh, I have one more. I have to bring them. Did everyone have a good, I guess, morning? We didn't finish till the morning, right? All right. Sorry for the, yeah, it was. It was amazing. Hello, self me. Yeah, mornings are tough. That's why I didn't get to the show this morning. All right. Proverbs chapter 2. My son, I'm going to read from the KJV because I can't find my book in my computer right now. My son, if thou wilt receive my words and hide my commandments with thee, so that thou incline thine ear unto wisdom and apply thine heart to understanding. Yea, if thou criest after knowledge and liftest up thy voice for understanding, if thou seekest her as silver and searchest her as for hid treasures, then shalt thou understand the fear of the Lord and find the knowledge of God. For the Lord giveth wisdom, out of his mouth cometh knowledge and understanding. He layeth up sound wisdom for the righteous. He is a buckler to them that walketh uprightly. He keepeth the paths of judgment and preserveth the way of his saints. Then shalt thou understand righteousness and judgment and equity, yea, every good path. When wisdom entereth into thine heart, and knowledge is pleasant unto thy soul, discretion shall preserve thee, understanding shall keep thee. To deliver thee from the way of the evil man, from the man that speaketh froward things, who leave the paths of uprightness to walk in the ways of darkness, who rejoice to do evil and delight in the frowardness of the wicked, whose ways are crooked and they froward in their paths, to deliver thee from the strange woman and even the stranger which flattereth with her words, which forsaketh the guide of her youth and forgetteth the covenant of her God. For her house inclineth unto death, and her paths unto the dead. None that go unto her. Hey, Mitch, how you doing, bud? Return again. Neither take they hold of the paths of life, that thou mayest walk in the way of good men and keep the paths of the righteous. For the upright shall dwell in the land, and the perfect shall remain in it. But the wicked shall cut off from the earth, and the transgressors shall be rooted out of it. Okay, let us go to the wisdom books. Chapter 2. My son, if you take up my sayings and my commands you store within you, to make your ear hearken to wisdom, incline your heart to discernment. For if you call out to understanding, raise your voice to discernment. Hey, Linda. Oh man, Mitch, that's that's rough, man. Prayers and good vibes, my friend. So raise your voice to discernment. If you seek it like silver, search for it like treasure. Then will you understand the Lord's fear. Oops. And you will find the knowledge of God. For the Lord gives wisdom from his mouth, discerning knowledge. He stores for the upright prudence, a shield to those who walk blameless, to keep the paths of justice, and he watches the way of his faithful. Then you will understand righteousness, justice, and uprightness, each pathway of good. For wisdom will enter your heart, and knowledge be sweet to your palate. What's up, Nomad? Justin, hey, buddy. Cunning will watch over you, discernment will keep you, to save you from a way of evil, from a man who speaks perversely. They forsake the paths of uprightness to go in the ways of darkness. They rejoice to do evil, delighting in evil's perverseness, whose paths are crooked and twisted in their pathways, to save you from a stranger woman, from a smooth talking alien woman, who forsakes the guide of her youth and the pact of her God forgets. For her house leads down to death, and to the shades her pathways. All who come to her will not return and will not attain the paths of life, so that you walk in the way of the good and the paths of the just you keep. For the upright will dwell on earth, and the blameless survive on it. But the wicked are cut off from the earth, and traitors torn away from it. Hey, Mitch, throw your. Oh, I'll do it. Before I get into notes, I want to do something real quick. Sorry for the diversion. Go see Mitch at his place. Mitch is good people. Okay. Chapter 2 notes. So, verse 1. Oh, you're welcome, Mitch. Here as elsewhere the mentor presents himself as an authoritative figure who is the dependable source of wisdom for his as yet untutored disciple. Verse 5, then will you understand the Lord's fear. Since the fear of the Lord is represented definitionally as the beginning of wisdom, the converse is also true. A person, by making a strenuous and sincere effort to discover wisdom, will come to understand what fear of the Lord is. For he, verse 6, is the one who ultimately imparts all wisdom. 7. A shield. The notation that wisdom protects one from mishaps is a piece of the general conception of wisdom's possessing pragmatic advantages. Verse 10, for wisdom will enter your heart. Here and then above in verse 2, the English reader should recall that the heart is conceived as the seed of understanding, rather like mind. Although it also is associated with emotion, that was the end of the sentence. I've read it with the wrong inflection. Apologies. Cunning. So the comment in 1:4, it may be useful to keep in mind that. Let me go to that real quick. Oops. I won't get there in the books of Moses. So 1:4. So shrewdness and cunning, this book uses in a positive sense a cluster of terms or designs. In the next verse belongs to the cluster that in other contexts have a connotation of deviousness or scheming. Shrewdness or mach, for example, is the word used for the primeval serpent in Genesis 3:1. Such usage fits in with the pragmatic curriculum of Proverbs. Intelligence of the most practical sort, involving an alertness to potential deceptions and seductions, is seen as an indispensable tool for this safe, satisfying, and ethical life. And a fool is repeatedly thought of as a dupe. So he was just defining cunning as the negative and not in the English consideration of cunning being not always negative. 12. Perversely, the Hebrew hot. Oh, Lord. I've been practicing my Hebrew, y'all. It just isn't going well. Suggests things topsy-turvy, upended from their proper place. Proverbs repeatedly uses antithetical spatial metaphors for the good and the evil life. The former is a straight way. The latter is perverse, topsy-turvy, or, as in verse 15, crooked and twisted. Doing okay, Justin? 13. They forsake the paths of uprightness. The Hebrew here in the next verse uses a plural participle form, forsaking the paths. This entire first piece of admonition to the young man is quite general. Is quite general, warning him to stay away from bad people. The unit that begins with verse 16 is more specific. Good. I'm glad. Once you get used to the language and how things flow, it's not that hard. So, a warning of the dangers of the sexual seductress or seductor. I will not. I won't engage in one-sided. But remember, wisdom is teaching a young man. But either way, 15. Twisted. That is, both the paths and the men who go on them are twisted. Stranger woman. The meaning of the Hebrew Zahra has been much debated. The usual English designation, strange woman, is misleading because it implies that she is strange, that is, somehow bizarre. She is not, as some have claimed, a prostitute, because verse 17 indicates that she is married. So in the KJV, it clearly states that she's a prostitute. Verse 17 indicates that she is married. There is also scant suggestion that, as others have argued, she is a foreigner, even though the parallel term in this line, Nokirachia, alien woman, often means foreigner. In cultic context, a czar is someone prohibited from entering the sacred zone of the sanctuary because he is not a priest. That sense is relevant to our text. The married woman, because she is contracted to another man, is prohibited to susceptible youth. The paired term, nokriya, as opposed to, what was the other one? Nokriya. Okay, so it's the same. Then, in the poetic parallelism, probably has the force of another man's wife, alien in a sexual rather than national sense. Yeah, I agree with that, Mitch. Considering they call wisdom the widow in Hebrew, makes sense. 17. The guide of her youth. While some render aloof as companion, the point is, in this patriarchal society, the husband is expected to provide moral guidance for his wife, which in this case she has flagrantly ignored. The verbal root of the Hebrew noun means to instruct and has no association with companionability. The pact of her God, given the context of abandoning her husband guide, the most likely reference is to the marriage contract, or perhaps by extension to the divine prohibition of adultery. Her house leads down to death. More literally, stoops down or tilts down. It is unnecessary to amend beta, her house, to Netivata, her path, as some have proposed. Because the phrase offers a vivid image of the house of the adulteress, her husband may be away on business, as in chapter 7, as a death trap. You enter it and find yourself on a chute sliding down into the realm of death. The writer seems to assume that adultery leads to death, a condign punishment, though he might have in mind the consequence of the husband's vengeance. Compare it to 723, and we'll get there. 19. All who come to. The Hebrew makes a pointed pun because to come into a woman means to have sex with her. The house leading down to death is thus metonymically linked with the woman's body leading to death. See, the Bible can be funny. The upright will dwell on earth. The multivalent Hebrew eretz here has the sense of earth, not land, because what is at issue is survival and life. The person who follows the ethical path marked out by wisdom will live long on earth, while the wicked die before their time. The next verse, like the men who succumb to the wiles of the seductress. And that's it for that. It's only been 28 minutes. We can do 1054 if you would like. When she decided, Self-Me, when she decided to seduce the young man. All right. For those of you who want to stick around. Oh, no, Self-Me, you're good. Hazel wants to learn more about which, Linda? The Catholic Church? All right. I mean, these chapters aren't too dense, so. Plus, it kind of gets silly at times. Before she walked in or reached what, Justin? The I was gonna switch to 1054 and all that. Yeah, Self-Me. It has that poetic rhythm and rhyme going to it. So, especially in Proverbs and a lot in Psalms, you have to think of it as poetry, and sometimes that get your brain going. As Justin was well. Oh, Widow of the Heart. It's when she decided to seduce the young man. So whenever she decided she was going to become an adulteress, the marriage covenant died, right? So her mind her husband was dead to her in the marriage covenant sense. Were you, Linda? Well, I mean, it's like we've said all along with all of these, even with the Tao, right? They all kind of coalesce into things that we have going on in our lives, and we really that we, if we look for things, look for wisdom in things that are going on, then we can see that, right? The human mind craves patterns and starts to recognize those things. Yes, help me. I think it's interesting that something written, the Proverbs were written, what, over 3,000 years ago. So, but the wisdom there is definitely poignant. So, okay. Spider web, yeah. Oh, absolutely. But it, and it's not always, when you ask for wisdom, you also seek it out, right? You read and you speak to people who you know are wise in the area in which you need wisdom. Oh, okay, Mitch. Never mind. You're saying what I'm saying. So Mitch is all up in my brain. All right, let's do something a little lighthearted. 10:54 and all that jazz. About all I can zoom in. I appreciate it, Mitch. All right. This is the Roman Inquisition. Who else has the song pop in their head every time we say it? So 9 o'clock to 3, closed on Sunday. Witness. I think of wisdom needing supportive witness like knowledge. Yeah, you notice how they split out wisdom and knowledge, one being like the Lord and then one being like God. So self, that is absolutely true. So wisdom begets knowledge. If y'all think of any other questions regarding that, you can ask while we're reading this. This is just a crazy little romp through history. So I'm more than happy to answer. So, Lateran the Fourth. In 1215, the Pope was Innocent the Third. so called because he never had much of interest to report when going to confession. It was he who convened the Fourth Lateran Council, the greatest of the Middle Ages. The council opened on November 11th, which was Armistice Day, but not yet. There were 412 bishops, 800 abbots and priors, and many heads of religious orders. They worked quickly. They met in just 3 sessions, finishing on November 30th. This marked the church's apogee for episcopal efficiency. Yep, exactly. Without understanding, wisdom and knowledge fall by the wayside like tails in a wheat field. Amen, Mitch. Amen. Over the following centuries, consular progress progressively slowed until finally it took Vatican II 4 years to do its work, thus putting the lie to the modern claim that the Middle Ages were centuries of indolence. The first canon was Lateran IV, most famous. It was a profession of faith and a clear rebuke to the Albigenses. Do I think Humpty fell? Humpty was pushed. It was an assassination attempt. It included the first official use of the word transubstantiation, but this was not the first time transubstantiation was believed. The second canon condemned a book written by an already dead theologian, Joachim of Flora, an early precursor of the New Age movement. Joachim had posited 3 ages of church history. The age of the Father corresponded to Old Testament times. The age of the Son was the time of the church and would last until 1260, just a few years away. The age of the Holy Spirit would follow until the end of time and would be a utopian period in which the ecclesiastical order would be replaced by the Christian equivalent to the age of Aquarius. Other canons of Lateran IV set out punishments for errant clerics. Much to their dismay, but to the general approval of the Catholic faithful, among other things, clerics were forbidden not only to participate in games of chance, but even to observe them. Lay gamblers liked this provision because it increased their own odds. Justin. Let's see. So, Linda, have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. That is a direct translation from the Hebrew, not philosophy cracks or crayons. Okay, Dominic. Dominic de Guzman was a Spaniard. He had observed how ineffective efforts had been to curb Albigenese, and in 1215 he decided a new religious order was needed, one consisting of preachers who would go around preaching against heresy. He named this order of preachers the Order of Preachers. It wasn't a catchy name, and so, in other wild coincidence, everyone ended up calling its members the Dominicans. Dominic wanted his preachers to be the best anywhere, and he thought great preaching would come only from extensive studies in theology and philosophy. He placed great stress on intellectual preparation, and the Dominicans became known as the smart guys of the church, mostly because they were. After rigorous training, Dominic's preachers went out and dominated public debates. They were debate me bros, y'all. We know a few of those. Gradually, they won over the well-educated and the uneducated. The former were the harder to convince since they thought they already knew everything. Eventually, Albigensianism subsided, largely due to the work of Dominic's men. Oddly, even today, Catholics think Dominic invented the rosary. This is not true. The rosary existed long before his time. He invented clever promotion of the rosary, which was about as important. Because a devotion doesn't accomplish much if no one is devoted to it. Francis of Assisi, probably one of the most famous bishops. Francis of Assisi was 11 years younger than Dominic. He was called of Assisi because he was born in Assisi, Italy. His father was in France on a business trip when Francis was born. And by his mother, the boy was named Giovanni. But his father changed the name to Francis as soon as he got home because he had enjoyed his trip to France. There's no evidence that this caused the infant any cognitive dissonance. Francis grew up in a wealthy household and lived a life common to the young men of his class. When he was around 25, he prayed in the half-ruined church of San Damiano, and was startled to hear a voice telling him to rebuild it, which he did. He didn't realize that God meant him to rebuild not just that church, but the church at large. Later, Francis heard the voice again and became an itinerant and dirt-poor preacher. He gathered like-minded men around him, and they had a great effect wherever they went, particularly on those who had been attracted to the Waldenses' lives of poverty. What, Francis? All I ever can think of is what was the Bill Murray movie when he was in the army? Mitch, can you help me? Anybody? Bill Murray, when he says, "That's a fact, Jack." And Francis was the violent guy. Stripes. Thank you, Self. Thank you, Justin. So, Within 10 years, there were 5,000 friars minor. The second term, not meaning that they were under voting age. Francis died in 1226, 2 years prior, while on a 40-day fast. He received the stigmata. While on a 40-day fast, he received the stigmata. He was the first person known to have received the marks of the Lord's passion on his own body. A year before that, Francis visited Subiaco, where Benedict had lived so many centuries earlier, and there was a fresco of Francis. There, a fresco of Francis was painted. It still can be seen in a lower chapel behind plexiglass screen that was put in place a little while after Francis's visit. Frederick II. When Innocent III died in 1216, Frederick II, the future Holy Roman Emperor, was 22 years old. He was determined, crafty, and entirely without scruples. He would become, at least in Europe, the church's greatest foe during the 13th century. That was the time of crusades. 7 times in 10 years, Frederick promised the Pope who succeeded Innocent that he would lead a crusader army to the Holy Land, in particular, and to the East in general. Each time he reneged. He preferred to stay at home, polishing his plans for universal or at least European rule. Finally, Frederick did prepare to embark with an army, but dilly-dallied so long that pestilence broke out in his army's encampment, and many soldiers died. Frederick declared that he too had come down sick, but few believed him. His army dissolved, the remaining men went home, and Frederick went back to his scheming. Years later, Frederick actually did go to the Holy Land, in particular, and the East in general. And arriving in Jerusalem, crowned himself king there. He proved so unwelcome to the Christians of Jerusalem that when he made his way to the ship that would take him back to Italy, the local butchers pelted him with offal. For decades, Frederick opposed and sometimes literally fought the popes. In 1245, at the Council of Lyon, the bishops put Frederick on trial and declared him deposed. In response, Frederick anticipatorily quoted Queen Victoria, saying he was not amused. 5 years later, Frederick was dead, which amused nearly everyone else. Thomas Aquinas. The 13th century was a time of political turmoil and intrigue. But it also was a time of great intellectual consolidation and advance. The most consolidated and advanced of all the writers in the era was Thomas Aquinas. He was born in 1225 in the castle at Roccasecca, where his father served as Count of Aquino. When he was 20, Thomas was sent to Paris to study under Albert the Great, who at the time was the smartest man in Europe. Thomas eventually would rise to that distinction himself. Albert lived to be 80. Thomas never reached 50. Yet the younger man produced a wide array of works that are read with profit to this very day. Aquinas is good. I'm sure, Mitch, you have read him. He wrote many commentaries, not just on scripture, but on the writings of earlier theologians and even on Aristotle. But his most famous for the Summa contra Gentiles or Gentiles and the Summa Theologiae. I think probably the Summa Theologiae is the most famous. That's the one I had to read in school. These multi-volume works were intended for what Thomas called beginners in theology. Beginners in theology. Beginners in the 13th century were more intelligent than graduate students in the 21st. This often is cited as proof of the debilitations of modern education. However that may be, Thomas has come to be considered not just the smartest man in Europe of his time, but the greatest theologian of all time. Despite the fact that when he was in school, his classmates called him the dumb ox, a nickname taken from the title of a book by G.K. Chesterton. Excuse me. I'm sorry, y'all. Celestine V. For 2 years, beginning in 1292, the papal see was vacant. Half the papal electors were Frenchmen, and they didn't want an Italian pope. Half were Italians, and they didn't want a French pope. Since a two-thirds vote to elect the pope, there was no pope. This annoyed common Christians and no one more than an elderly hermit named Pietro de Morone. He wrote the cardinals saying that keeping the throne of Peter vacant was a scandal and insisting that they elect the new pope at once. The cardinals wrote back to Pietro and said, "Okay, we elect you." Thank you, Linda. Thank you. This was not what Pietro had anticipated, but he went to Rome anyway and accepted the job, taking the name of Celestine V. The new pope was a kindly fellow, but entirely inexperienced as the leader of men. Running the heater is playing hell on my sinuses. Let alone as the leader of something as large as the church. He soon realized that he wasn't cut out for the papacy, and he resigned after being pope for only 5 months. His successor, Boniface VIII, was so fond of Celestine that he put the old man under house arrest, where he died in 1296. Exactly, Mitch. For his part, Dante, writing a quarter of a century later, was so fond of Boniface that in the Divine Comedy, he put Boniface in hell. Oh, man. I hope this is funny to everybody else because it cracks me up. No one now remembers Boniface except for how Dante treated him. Right, Linda? And who's a good girl, Hazel? Who's a good girl? But such are the breaks of great literature. And Dante. Dante Alighieri was an epic poet who wrote an epic poem. He was born in Florence in 1265, died in Ravenna in 1321, and sent many people to hell, particularly his fellow Florentines. Yep, exactly, Mitch. And remember that the lowest level of hell is ice cold. It's Dante. Um, Dante envisioned it as being so far away from the warmth of God that there's no way that I don't know. I don't. Dante is definitely not canonized. Uh, so far away from the warmth of God that there's no way that hell could be um, hot. So he depicted it as cold, right? Ah, the sod. So some of whom had arranged for him to be sent into exile, never to return. And a few popes, including Celestine V, who actually ended up being canonized after Dante's death. Yeah, the attitude of theater is definitely canonized Justin, made a saint, if that's what you're asking. So Dante's death, proving that Dante wasn't always as prescient as he had been, as has been assumed. Nevertheless, Dante was the greatest poet of all time, with the possible exception of Ogden Nash. Those who may disagree with this characterization of Dante's talents risk ending up where Celestine V didn't, and deservedly so. Dante's locational mistake regarding Celestine can be found in the Inferno. The first canticle of the Divine Comedy, which wasn't a comedy because there was nothing funny about sending people to hell, even if by mistake. Dante made up for his faux pas in Purgatorio and Paradiso, where he placed several Florentines and popes who maybe shouldn't have been placed so high, so things balanced out. Okay, we'll stop it with Dante dropping people down into the pit. Okay, good. Yes, canonized equals becoming a saint. Yeah, self me. That's pretty good. I like that. The brilliant twilight of balance through the madness, laugh through your tears, the comedy, the audience, and the participant. Yeah, yeah, it was definitely some revenge writing in the form of a poem. Okay, you guys, I will leave y'all with that. That's an hour with two different subjects, one heavier than the other. But I enjoy this book. It makes me laugh. Um, I have to stop myself from laughing out loud with this, but I was forced to learn it in a private school as a kid and then homeschooled. Hey, y'all are welcome. Thank y'all for hanging out with me on a Sunday. Definitely not something you have to do. Yeah, yeah, Mitch. Uh, fitting together is good. I may I don't know. Now I got to run to my exes, so I probably won't do another one. I'm sure we will see you guys around 7:45 tonight because there will be Meade County Ethics hearing part 4 by Generally Specific. So funny enough, for those of you who are part of that sector, JJ said he wanted to have a discussion with me. So I may prepare some interview questions and see if he's really wanting a discussion with me. What do y'all think? Thank you, Self Me. That is a compliment that I take to heart very well. Hazel got bogged down in the seductress thing. She doesn't want to be known as a seductress. Yeah, Justin, it would be. Yeah, I think I'll drive. All right, y'all. Y'all be good for the rest of the day. See y'all in about 5 hours, 5 and 3/4 hours.